It was completely fake.
It was absolutely fake. It was CGI, man.
Yeah, and the voice narration, it stuttered and everything. There's no way that was real.
What's up with that? And a puppeteer that was definitely teleoperated. No way that was real.
And they scripted the whole thing. I mean, it was clearly scripted. There's no way
Totally
it was
fake.
ad-libbed.
Totally fake.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I am with Dr. Scott Walter again. Yes, that seems to be all the headlines since Figure's really impressive demonstration of Figure 1 doing some cool stuff. And apparently you're not allowed to do anything cool anymore without everybody calling you out that it's fake. So we're going to kind of walk through it. I think the first thing probably to do is just watch the actual video.
Well, first, before we get into it, is like, there's nothing wrong with a healthy dose of skepticism. So you always have to look at these things and understand. You have to look at people's track records and everything. You have to look at the feasibility of stuff's going on. So we are looking at it, and we will look at it very skeptically because, clearly you need to have people out there that are going to point out some things. And is that an issue or not? And we're going to try to go through and see if we can help settle the debate.
There we go. So cool. So I think the first thing to do is to look at the evidence, right? So we should look at the primary evidence here.
And I think the best thing is to literally do what we did when we saw this and just remain speechless.
Exactly. There we go. So this is a whopping, I don't know, it's a couple minutes long. So anyway, here we go.
Hey, Figure 1, what do you see right now?
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great, can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
Great. So based on the scene right now, where do you think the dishes in front of you go next?
The dishes on the table, like that plate and cup, are likely to go into the drying rack next.
Great. Can you put them there?
Of course.
All right, so how do you think you did?
I think I did pretty well. The apple found its new owner, the trash is gone, and the tableware is right where it belongs.
I agree. Thanks, Figure 1.
You're welcome. If there's anything else you need help with, just let me know.
With spring arriving, vacation time might be here as well, and that means fun times with family and friends, but don't let a great night out spoil your next day. ZBiotics is the solution to enjoying your night and having a great next day. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct and not dehydration that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it the most. Just remember to drink ZBiotics before drinking alcohol, drink responsibly, and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. I recently took ZBiotics on our ski trip, and each evening as we started our après-ski activities, I drank a bottle of ZBiotics before heading out. I stayed hydrated between drinks, enjoyed my family time, and the next day I felt great. ZBiotics is a real game changer for fun nights out or in. One bottle of ZBiotics is equal to the cost of a cocktail, but nothing beats a fresh morning. Go to zbiotics.com/Dr. No or scan the QR code on the screen right now to get 15% off your first order when you use Dr. No at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using my code so you can stay prepared no matter the time or occasion. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Be sure to head to zbiotics.com/Dr. No and use the code Dr. No at checkout for 15% off. Thanks to ZBiotics for sponsoring this episode. And now let's get back to it. Let us go back to, we'll start with this whole thing, but I want to make a note.
First of all, how do you think it did?
I think that was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Like on many, many, many levels. It's incredibly remarkable. What do you think?
Yeah, it is. And in many ways, I was not surprised to see this because all the hints and all the pieces have been out there. Because we've seen some of these things. So anyone who thinks, oh, you can't do it, they don't realize, well, it can be done because we've already seen it done everywhere else. Yeah. And the other thing to remember is that it says right there, powered by OpenAI. They have OpenAI on their team right now. So they've got access to a lot of resources right now from the AI side. And so they do not have to develop the speech to text or the text to speech. That's an off the shelf thing that they're able to get from OpenAI. A lot of the VLM, being able to look at video multimodality, that's already out there. The abilities for these large language models to do inference like that, we already saw that from Agility. So remember just a couple of months ago, Agility, and it looks like with NVIDIA and using some combination there, it might have been with Google or others, I'm not sure. They were able to describe a scene in very vague terms like we saw here. So again, what Agility did is they had 3 boxes on towers behind their bot, behind Digit, and then 3 empty towers in front of it. And rather than describing them by like the number of the towers, which is on there, they said, pick up the box that's the color of Darth Vader's sword and put it on the tallest stand.
Yep.
And the bot was then able to go over and then create the motion model to do that. So it had to have cultural references. It had to understand that Darth Vader's sword is red, look for a red box and all that. Same thing we're seeing here. Give me I want something to eat. And then it's like, oh, okay, something to eat. How can I do that? So if you described a scene like that to ChatGPT right now, and then asked it, it's like, if this is in my scene, pick something for me to eat. And then we'll look at it and say, oh, the only edible object here is that. So there's no surprise that it should be able to do that.
Yeah.
The thing that Agility was missing is that Agility, you had to type that in. So it was all text-based. So basically you do that. Now, anyone that has Alexa knows that you can talk to Alexa, and Alexa is then taking your speech and then turning it into tokens, which are just text, and then doing some sort of search on that, and then responding with a synthetic voice. Synthetic voices have improved a lot since Alexa. At that point, you had some woman that, her voice is used everywhere. She's basically said every possible word combination that's ever existed. And that was the only way to do it. But now you have these off-the-shelf tools that anyone can use. Because, I mean, we've seen some people do a couple of fake videos with Elon's voice and everything else that are pretty good. All you have to do is get someone's voice, be able to take that, tell it what you want to do, and it will sound just like it. Now, the big question is, don't know whose voice that is. Everyone thought it's Brett Adcock's voice, but he said it's not. It's someone else's. The best guess I've heard from Herbert is that maybe it's Steve Jobs, but I don't think it's quite Steve Jobs.
It sounds like a low-key version of Steve Jobs.
Maybe, but it sounds very, much lower, more baritone. And I'm almost wondering, it's like, because the Apple is in there. That's the reference. So if it's not Steve Jobs, could it be Wozniak? Now,
his voice doesn't sound like that though.
Yeah. So it maybe it's someone else, or we're missing something. But when we find out, it's going to be like, oh, of course, that makes absolute sense. Maybe there is some famous movie out there where there's a robot in there, and that was the voice of the bot or something like that. It's definitely not. It's not from Iron Man. So I don't know. At some point, we'll figure out what the voice is. But the big hang up, and you can get into this, is the fact that the voice stutters every now and then. So it is uncannily human-like. And should we be hung up over that stutter? Or is that actually a sign of more powerful things to come as far as language synthesis?
So
Really
I
being able
actually,
to mimic a human.
I want to start with a demo here because
Mhm.
so many people are like, this is impossible. It's like, I literally have a chat GPT thing on my phone and I can say like, so I can speak to it and I can say, oops, sorry. Can you please tell me about an apple and why apples are good to eat? And so you can see it converted that to text. Sorry. And
Mhm.
now it will, oh, sorry. And then I send it. So anyway, but now what it's doing is it's thinking, and then I can have it read it aloud. I thought it was going to read aloud, but sorry. Anyway, it's responding in text, right? But it responded to my voice commands, and I don't know why it's not reading it. I thought,
And
must
then you
have to
can
set.
take the text and you can put it into something to read it out
Yeah,
loud. So
yeah,
all those tools are there. And you
right,
don't have,
right.
I mean, you don't even need to have AI experts to be able to chain that together. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
All you need to have is some competent programmers to be able to take these tools and put it together. The other
Yeah,
thing that's very clear is the inference is not fully inside of the figure bot right now. So the large language model is probably
yes,
operating the cloud on the outside, and they get the connection in there, and they have
yeah,
whatever local inference they need to be able to do the controls of the bot. So a
right.
lot of those things that you're seeing there are not a surprise. And really it was like, I was expecting everyone to tie these tools together sooner because they've been there
Yeah,
for a while. It's
yeah,
like, what's
exactly.
taking everyone? They should be able to do it.
Here it is. I got it working right, but wait a second. If we just stop talking for a second, see the cloud? That's exactly what you saw on Figure's face. Is that
Mhm.
cloud?
It sounds like
Here we go.
you've had a moment of realization or a
Whoop. Oh no, we've had an interrupt. Oh well.
together.
Oh, there
Glitch.
we go. Yeah. Poor connection. I don't know why it's telling me I have a poor connection, but you could hear that. That was a female voice, but very, very similar. And this is just like the app that I have on my phone. So nothing particularly magical about it. And it responds in a very similar way to this. Now, Brett did say they specifically have tweaked this to be somebody's voice, maybe Steve Jobs. And so it's going
Which
to sound more like
anyone can do.
yeah,
Anyone can do that.
yeah,
There are probably people watching this video that have already done that, or know people who have
right,
done it.
right.
You do not have to be working for one of these companies. The tools are already there.
Yeah,
Now, imagine if you work with one of these companies that's
yeah,
developing this kind of stuff.
right,
You can hone that tool to do whatever you want. So
right,
that part of it should not be something to say, oh, they're absolutely totally faking it.
right,
People are hung up on the voice thinking it's doing that. I think that's impressive that they actually have a little bit of a stutter in there. And it
right.
could be that if you are capturing someone's voice that tends to do that every now and then, it might just come through. That's how it's going to speak.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's important to note. So I was showing like off the shelf, it's got the same little bubble thing, like the thought bubble
Mhm.
that clearly Figure did. But remember that we're using a public facing version of ChatGPT 4. We don't know what Figure has access to because of course they've made a deal with OpenAI and OpenAI is giving them this stuff and clearly they were able to integrate it very, very quickly, which is super cool. But they might be using GPT 4.5 or some sort of new version
Right,
of
right.
Whisper or
The,
something
the
like
other
that.
thing, the
So, you
other thing
know,
to
they
remember
have
is
that.
that every one of your responses, your text responses that you can say, do it in the style of Shakespeare or
Yeah.
John
Yeah.
Donne or
Right.
Hemingway, and it will do it. And then you imagine, okay, here are some voice clips of a person speaking.
Right.
Now, what I want you to do is write an essay or text as if they were speaking it. And if
Yeah.
it's a person that tends to put in injections and goes ums and ahs and stuff like that, it's going to say, well, that's how that person speaks. I am actually going to put it in there. So we should not be surprised if it's actually been told to imitate someone's voice. This
Oh
is
yeah.
not taking it and saying, say the A's the way they say in Asian. It's like literally speak the way they do, using
Right.
the same kind of semantics and everything that that person uses when they speak. So you sound like, not just sound like them, but you talk like them.
Right. Right.
And so it's
Exactly.
more than just utterance, it's everything else that's going on there. So that's the reason why it's there. Now, everything else that we've seen here is also quite impressive in the fact that it was able to see the screen, the scene and describe it. We've
Yeah.
already seen Google DeepMind be able to do something like that.
Right.
Describe a scene, understand what the scene. Gemini is able to do it.
Yeah.
Those tools are there to be able to do it. As remarkable as it is, again, a lot of stuff is sort of off the shelf, and all you have to do is be clever enough to pull the right tools off the shelf and know how to integrate it.
Right. Right. And just so people know, like if you're not technical, like ChatGPT, like OpenAI has APIs that any company or individual can use to create their own GPTs. So none of this stuff is magical. This is all stuff that just exists.
You don't, all you need is competent programmers and people who are competent in the field of AI.
Right.
And they will be able to do quite a bit. Now, if you have some people that are kind of stellar, and I believe this is Corey Lynch that's here. So he worked at Google DeepMind. So you have some people that probably, really know what they're doing as well as being competent. And they're able to pull a trick like this off.
Yeah. So, and just speaking of that, let me see if I can pop open this for 1 second. Let me get this open. Just thinking that would be a good thing to probably pop up here. So, okay. So speaking of Corey, and he's definitely worth following over here. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. But he says our robot can describe visual experience, which we saw, plan future actions, which we saw, reflect on its memory, which we saw. It said like, why did you give me the apple? And then explain its reasoning verbally, all of which actually ChatGPT can do. Right. Those are all things that it can do. The planning future actions, I'm not so sure about, but that's something where you get into what Figure is doing and the magic that they're doing. And it's very, very cool. So he gets into,
that's basically Figure's value add is to do the planning and to do the planning.
It's a pretty big value add.
Yes.
And make the robot actually work. So
exactly.
But yeah, so it's here we go. So let's see, Figure 1. So it says connecting Figure 1 to a large pre-trained multimodal model gives it interesting new capabilities. So that is all stuff that OpenAI did. And then let's see, I wanted to get to the part where he says, the same model. Okay. So the model, which I assume is the ChatGPT model, processes the history of the conversation. So again, it's got a context window. It remembers what's going on, including past images. Yeah. So it remembers all of this stuff, comes up with a language response spoken back to the human via text to speech, basic stuff. I mean, I say basic, it's crazy because 2 years ago, this didn't exist, but now it's basic. The same model is responsible for deciding which learned closed loop behavior to run on the robot to fulfill a given command. This is where the magic of the integration and the really magical stuff happened. And it's amazing if they did this in 13 days. Which is how long it was. Okay. So anyway, fulfill a given command, loading a particular neural network weights into the GPU and executing policy. So clearly they've got a library of pre-trained or pre-learned behaviors, grabbing things, picking things up, walking, moving around, whatever those things are.
Basically muscle memory. What the analogy is here is that if you are playing any sort of sport, you practice.
Yes.
You practice all these maneuvers and everything else, and you have them, and you've got this repertoire of stuff that you can draw on behaviors. The same thing if you're an actor. So you learn how to play certain roles. Then at some point you learn, well, we've got a particular role. We want you to go in there and take the skill set you have and start applying that.
Right.
In some cases you do improv. So you learn all these different things. And then when it's time to do the skit, you have to improvise and you draw on that body of knowledge that you have that also almost becomes muscle memory that you can react. So was this rehearsed? Oh, absolutely. It was rehearsed. Lots and lots of stuff were rehearsed. That's what the learning whole thing is about. Right. And some of it may have been operatedly. Others may have been showing. For the most part, it seems like a lot of it may have come from them showing these demonstrations of how to grab an apple and drop it off again and again. It learned that. It was shown that. It imitated it. It did enough. It then learned to do stuff with dishes and learn how to pick that up. So it probably had this large repertoire of stuff. So all they had to do is go in there and now let's role play right here and just see what it does. So again, from the language model, it says, oh, this is the one that you want me to do. I'm going to do that right now. And it goes ahead and it plays that particular skit. And then it gets ready to do the other. And so, it was rehearsed, but not in the way that you think.
Right. And I think it's important just to be very, very clear to separate this out from like Boston Dynamics or something. Boston Dynamics, at least traditionally what I've seen is that they have programmers that code the behavior most of it.
That's
And it's impressive, like what they're able to do. This is very different because you can see from what Corey said that it's learning these closed loop behaviors, and then it's doing that via a neural network. So it's learning these behaviors not by a human coding it in and going, move your joints like this, pick up the apple, move it over here. That would be incredibly scripted. There's a difference between scripted and rehearsed. I'm sure they've done this action over again, but they haven't scripted out the exact position of the apple, the exact lighting of the whole situation. All of that stuff is not scripted out.
Different.
It's
the placement of the parts, everything is different. So the difference between something that's scripted is that when you see the film, every time you watch the film, you are seeing the exact same film.
Yeah.
But when you go to the theater, you may be going to what you think is the same play, but every day it's performed a little bit different, maybe even with a different actor. So the story may be the same, but the actions, the cues, where all those things happen are done completely differently. So to me, I mean, it's almost not remarkable. It's what you would expect at this point.
Right. And it specifically says on it says everything in this video is a neural network. So it's very specific about that. But I want to watch the apple because I think this was kind of the moment in the demo where I just was like, whoa, because watch the dexterity at which it transfers hands and then drops the apple into his hand. This is really impressive. And it's just like, it's so natural. Pick it up, now, transfer hands, drop it.
Look what it does with the trash as well. It understands physics pretty well. Because normally when we've seen this in the past where it picks something up, it'll pick something up and go over and place it very gingerly. When it goes to throw everything in the bin, it just tosses it in. So you look how kind of nonchalant it is about it. So it doesn't waste any effort in doing it. It does exactly what it needs to do to accomplish it. It doesn't have to place it perfectly. Just go ahead, get a little bit closer. So I can go ahead and put it in there. Just look at that. See that? Just dropped it in.
Yeah. I mean, that's so cool. It's so human. It's just like, whoop.
Exactly. And notice that at the end, it just kind of flicks it away.
Right. Yeah.
So now where I was really impressed is we had seen from Sanctuary that they had a very fast moving humanoid model that was also showing dexterity that was very, very quick. I was not expecting to see Figure do this quickly because we haven't seen that kind of speed from it. So not only is it fast, it is so fluid and so natural that that is really what impressed me the most. Everything else around it was like, yeah, I expect they should be able to do it. And it probably would be harder to fake this thing at this point than to actually do what they did.
Right. Yeah. I mean, clearly this is not C-3PO with a human in the body because like, obviously it's
not,
like,
it's not a puppeteer in the back and it's not voiced over or anything like that. It's definitely being
there have been critics that are saying this is all a fraud and Brett Adcock's a fraud. And I want to address that because this is the kind of thing like this is a jail sentence. Like this video right here is a jail sentence if they're faking it. They're very explicit about what they did. And this is a, this is not something that you're
trying to fool investors and stuff like that. So that there's a line, and you may have one person that's willing to do it, but not the whole company.
Yeah, exactly.
People are like, wait a minute, no, not me.
Like, I'm one of the C-suite. I am not going. But
yes, exactly. There's a reason why you have a lot of the So I absolutely agree that this definitely looks real to me. It's not CGI. Done in one take. And it's not so much that I'm taking them for their word. It's just like, based on the toolkits that we've seen out there, you should be able to do it. There's even grad students that have probably thrown together something like this before, or something very, very close.
Yeah. So let's watch this one more time. I believe that when they did that Keurig demonstration that really blew everybody's mind a couple of months ago, and you saw the kind of humanness, and they said that it learned from watching videos. This is that same kind of thing. If you watch the motion of the hands, it looks like a human being picking something up and kind of tossing it. It's got that fluidity and that speed and that nonchalance, what you were saying. It's like the non-caringness of it. So when it actually starts to move right there, it's like, shoot, moves it forward, moves it over. And it
even holds it in kind of a nice angle to make it a little bit easier to toss it in.
And it just tosses it and then it flicks it back.
It's like, here,
really nice.
Just go ahead and take that. So that motion is extremely impressive. Now, when we go back to the Keurig one, that was both an impressive and unimpressive. I mean, a lot of people that looked at it say, well, what's the big deal? So they had a bot doing it. And the big deal wasn't that the bot was able to do it, but understanding how it was taught.
Right.
That's why we thought it was impressive, is because it was taught through demonstrations. It wasn't taught
Exactly.
telerobotically. It wasn't taught through a script or anything else. It was enough demonstration. They did it. And it was so
Right.
important. They said, man, we want to show it, even though a lot of people will just say, what's the big deal? The
Right.
big deal was that they realized there's an architectural breakthrough here on how we could train these things. And of course,
Right.
we've seen very soon after that, Aloha and others are basically showing the same thing,
Yep.
something
Yep.
very similar. Demonstrations, grad students, once again, being able to show doing that. A couple of, Covariant showed some very interesting stuff that they've been taking videos to be able to do industrial robots that they showed the day
Right.
before this hit. So that's why I wasn't surprised. It was like waiting for that shoe to drop at this point.
Yeah.
Man,
Exactly.
we're hearing a bunch of things here, and it seems to me they could do something like this. And also, Optimus could be doing something like this, and they could have demonstrated something like this a long time ago. And the big question, this is the elephant in the room for me right now, is why hasn't Tesla been able to demonstrate this yet?
Yeah.
You have a theory?
Well, I mean, they kind of did. They had the whole egg transfer thing, but it was much more careful.
We don't know if that was like just telerobotic or if it was a little bit of training. It may not have been done through video training. We don't know. We do know that for the t-shirt that was done telerobotically to be able to do it, to show the dexterity, but we have not seen a demonstration where you can talk to Optimus and on the fly ask Optimus to do something. So we don't know how these things are being triggered.
Right.
We don't know why it picked up the egg or anything like that. So it would be very important for us to see that, and also to see whether Optimus is able to do that response. And I think we know what the answer is.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is a strange thing to say, but I think being in bed with XAI is probably holding them back a little bit right now.
Yeah, it is.
It's not because of any fault of XAI. It's just less than a year old. It hasn't had time to create all of these multimodal models that these other companies have. And I don't think it'll take them that long to integrate it into Optimus and your car. I really am looking forward to the day when my car can have a conversation with me. Like, I think it's going to be really cool. But until Grok gets to a point where it's a little bit better than it is right now, it's not really possible. And they're not really shopping around. They could be using Llama. Hell, they could be taking, Meta's thing, but I'm sure they're going to use Grok, and it'll be fine, but it's going to take them another few
We're pretty
months.
sure they are, because Elon posted that meme showing, Grok on a robot. And so that kind of infers that that's what they're going to do. The question is Grok ready to do that yet? And are we going to see it this weekend? Are they going to fire back and say, oh, okay, we are able to do it? But, the question is the multimodality. Grok doesn't have the capability yet. And that is really central to getting this to work.
Exactly.
And so you may be able to use it to give some very simple instructions and commands for it to do something, but it may be very different than it understanding the scene. So you would have to describe the scene, and even then make sure it identifies certain objects.
Well,
so that's going to be
the
a
one
question.
thing we don't know what Grok 1.5 is like, and supposedly it's substantially better, but I don't know if that means it's multimodal as well. So, but if it is, we should actually have some relatively quick response that they should.
Now the question is, Tesla also has an AI team, which is working on taking video in and actions out. And so do they have that multimodality there? It is the only thing they're missing is that LLM model that they need to integrate in. And could they be doing that with Grok right away? In which case, maybe they can duplicate this thing very quickly. But to me, I've been expecting this for a long time, and I was expecting it from Tesla first.
Yes.
And we haven't seen it. Tesla is like in third place, because in some sense, agility demonstrate, and there's probably others that did it, but the agility presentation was pretty darn impressive. It just didn't have the speech to text.
Yes.
And now in this case, they've integrated everything in there to show it in a real scene. Okay, let's go. Come on, let's see.
The gauntlet has been. I want to show this cup and plate thing again, because again, watch the humanness of the motion. It's really, and the way it's dealing with both hands is really impressive. And it's not perfect, because it kind of goes back to like a neutral pose before it starts the next move. So notice that it actually like flicks the table, the drainer a little bit too.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah. Just like,
it kind of moves it a little bit out of the way. I don't know exactly
what was that about,
I don't know.
But again, I think that's sort of showing that there are going to be these interesting behaviors that these things do, that are going to activate interesting. Now we do see that there is at least another bot in the background that, whether it's fully complete or not. So there's probably at least 2 figures out there.
Figure 1 and figure 2, maybe, I don't know. So I think, it's, when you break it down, you can see it's got a neutral pose. By the way, I will give a suggestion to not just Brett and Figure, but every robotics company. This is something that, as a 3D animator, I notice all the time. They should never have it stay still. They should just have it just a little bit, just like in a video game where the character is doing a little motion. It should do something where it looks like it's breathing or something like that. Unless it's just off. Like if it's actively interacting with a person, it should look like it's alive, because it's creepy.
Otherwise, it looks like a mannequin. Yep.
Yeah, it's creepy when it's just sitting like this and doesn't do anything. Like it's just like, oh, okay, that's creepy. And then it starts.
That looks uncomfortable. I mean, come on, how long can you hold your arms like that, John? I can't do it very long. And the palms out.
And it's just sitting there, and then eventually it gets to the point where there it goes, and then it starts moving. So that's a suggestion from somebody who's been doing this for decades, is put motion into the body, and probably the neutral stance of having its hands out like this. I mean, I'm sure that's a temporary thing, probably so they can like see that it's gone back to neutral, because you can see it does that like over. It's like there's this neutral spot. Someplace it's like in a neutral spot like this, and then it sort of wakes up.
Yeah,
like
so
that.
it's always
and
in
now
a
it's in a
neutral
neutral
spot.
spot, and then it picks up the apple, neutral spot, and then it goes back to neutral spot. And then when he said
I'm not
goodbye,
sure if whether
right
part of the reasons for the neutral spot being like that is maybe to sort of reserve the area around it.
yes,
To say, hey, this is my space. Don't get too close because I could suddenly move.
right,
Making sure that you have that. The other might be that for some reason it is a very easy state for it to hold, that maybe it uses the minimum amount of energy there but I don't know if they're able to put brakes on those actuators or not, because I know if I hold my hands out, my muscles are, even though I'm not moving, my muscles are working in order to keep my arms.
Well, but it also could be, so notice this is its full neutral state. When we start, it's like this. Way back here, right? So it's like that until it starts moving. So maybe this is like a state where it says, oops, it's a state where it says I'm active, like I'm processing and I'm in the middle of something, so stay away from me. It might just be kind of a warning, like a visual warning that it's not in its full neutral state, because it clearly goes back to that here. Like when he says, are you done? And it's like, the guy's like, yeah, I'm done. And then it goes, and it goes back to its full neutral. So it's probably some sort of a visual language thing so they can see it. So, it's a choice clearly, but
that's the other thing is, by putting the hands out there, it's probably within its field of view. So it can get a really good sense of its calibrated position to make sure, okay, I know where my hands really are, even though through its normal proprioception from the encoders, it should know where it is. It's just a confirmation between the two.
Right. That's true. I hadn't even thought about that, but the fact that it's able to see its hands means that when it starts moving, it doesn't have to look and go like, oh, there's my hand. So it's already got that taken care of. So okay. Yeah. Let me see, like when it first wakes up here. Okay. So when he starts talking to it, I think it processes for a second. So it goes into like a speech bubble or whatever, the thought bubble. Yeah. So it goes from the one position to the other and then moves directly into an action. So it's also possible that that's just the, it says closed loop, right? That was what Corey said, closed loop activity. So the activity might be from here, pick up the object, switch hands, put the object down, go back to here. So that's a closed loop. That means that every action can take place in sequence because it always starts and ends at the same place. So
so a lot of times it helps to kind of know where your beginning state is going to be to predict everything else. So if you're coming from sort of an unknown state, then there's some additional planning you have to do to get there to get yourself to what might be a favorable position. So there can be some advantage. I think eventually they should be able to eliminate that, but certainly for industrial robots, you always like having what they call a home position that you start everything from, because everything is well known, and that all your motion evolves from that, and it evolves in a particular way that you like. Industrial robots, that's very important because you have double jointed wrists and elbows, but with the humanoid bot, you don't. So you don't have to worry about going into a different configuration.
Right.
But still, I mean, people who are roboticists will always like, I prefer to start from a known home position because everything just works better.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the same thing for animators. It's like a T pose, just standing feet shoulder width apart, hands out.
Right.
So similar kind of action for the robot.
Yeah. More of it's mostly like, I can predict tomorrow's weather if you can tell me today's.
Yeah.
So if you don't tell me the starting state, it's really hard for me to tell you where I'm going to end up. So I know I want to end up there, but how do I get there? And if I know how to always plan to get there from kind of the same position, it makes it a lot easier as opposed to doing it from some random position.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So so what other arguments do we have? The speech. We haven't really talked too much about the speech.
Well, just the speech and the stutter. Yeah. I think we talked about it a little bit, but if you want to go into detail.
I mean, the difficulty is just not knowing what they have access to from OpenAI, because I would guess that they have access to the next generation of speech synthesizers and things like that. And I've heard 11 Labs, that they'll take I think it's, you speak a couple of things, put in an hour of talking, whatever, and it will give you back something that's amazingly like your voice. And I would assume that would include things like ums and uhs and stuff like that if you wanted to. So it's there. It's unclear. I mean, it is incredibly natural and it's a little bit odd, but that was the part that kind of threw me, because I was like, it's interesting that it's not responding in a very, very mechanical sort of way. But we were talking before we did this recording that maybe a future version of an LLM like GPT 4.5 or something has more of an overview of what it's saying. Because currently what LLMs do is they say a word and then they say the next most predictable word and the next one and the next one and the next one, and it doesn't go back. But just like you and me, if we're thinking about something complicated, we might start a sentence and then say like, no. Okay, what I meant to say was this. And so you correct yourself as you go because you're thinking about it.
You know what I think this is that normally the way it works is you've got something that's taking speech to text, and then text to speech, and you get the LLM in the middle. So what that means is that the LLM is only bringing in text. So you just got to get that bit first. And so when it gets the text, it gets the text in a complete form, and then it analyzes that, and then it spits out the full text, and then that full text goes to a speech synthesizer. But what might be happening now is that they're not sending the full text out. It might actually be that it's not even kicking text out. Who knows? They may have something that's going straight to speech. It's like, forget the middleman. Why are we outputting text? Just go straight to speech. And that means if you're forming your thoughts and partway through you sort of change your mind that I want to use a slightly different adjective or different emphasis, it will go away. And I noticed that sometimes there was something that seemed like a stutter, but another one, it seemed like it was choosing one word and it changed something different. Remember, describe, why did you do what you did? And it's, I gave you the apple, because I needed to find something that was, and then a little stutter there, and it was thinking of another word and then said edible. So it's almost like it changed the token in the middle of it deciding to speak. And if that's happening, that's rather impressive, because now that means the reaction times are going to be faster. There's not going to be this latency because I have to go to text first and then I have to convert text to speech. What we can do is real time convert the two.
Yeah. So let's take a listen to this, because I think I'm right about it, the right spot.
Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I can provide you with.
That's just so cool that
only edible, so it's almost like it was thinking of something else, or it suddenly didn't know what word to use. And usually when we can't think of the word, we will do an interjection.
Yeah.
I do that a lot. I'm in awe because I'm thinking of the word and I have to fill the empty space.
Right. And especially if you, like your wife who natively speaks another language, when you speak another language, you hear that a lot because you're thinking really hard to try to process, the other language. So
because it's the only edible item I can provide you with.
It's just so cool. It just sounds so real. It's the only edible item. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so if you hear something that is my voice and it's an AI and it doesn't have the ums and ahs the way I speak, And you definitely know it's not me. So if I'm calling up and asking you for some money because I broke down in the middle of nowhere and there's no ums and ahs in there, then
The Nigerian prince needs the money.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'll wait for. I'll just be like, I want the and ah. Say that before I get it. So, the thing is that all of the speech end of things is OpenAI's. And that's what I was trying to demonstrate with the rather poor but it's on there. Download the ChatGPT app and use it. It works. You can have a conversation. It's exactly the same speed with the same latency and all of that kind of stuff. But they might have access to a more advanced version of this than we do because they're an OpenAI partner.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
If you got access to the API and everything, they might even be getting a special API developed just for them.
Right.
And again, why reinvent the wheel? You don't need necessarily to have your own LLM if you could just get it off the shelf. Everything else, there's no point. The value add is creating the bot and understanding how that model is going to work. And that seemed to be impressive. They got a pretty good speed up there. And I'd like to know how they did it. Whether did they just juice up the motors a little bit, or something else going in the motion planning. But it sounds like something's going in the motion planning on the actions that they have. They're feeding them at a pretty high rate. If they're doing it at 200 hertz, man, that's good.
Yeah,
that's a pretty high rate for the planning trajectory. And it seems like what they're probably doing is forecasting very much in the future and what they want, which is why it's able to go from one to another. Again, it's playing chess 5 moves ahead, not one move at a time like it was before.
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to look for that thing again. I've lost the page. All right. But anyway, that's the note on that graphic. Corey noted that it's making decisions at 200 hertz. And I think the frame rate of the camera is 10 hertz, which seems slow for, gamers and stuff, but that's perfectly adequate for a humanoid bot. Probably too slow for a car. A car I'd want to be, operating at least like 30 frames a second. But for a humanoid bot that's moving at human speeds, 10 hertz is fine. The output control 200 hertz means you're not going to get this kind of motion because it's going to correct itself. So
and then they have the control system itself, which is running at 1,000 hertz.
Exactly.
So that means for every single trajectory, they basically have sort of 5 updates that are controlling it to try to get it to wherever it's supposed to be going for that plan move. And at 200 hertz, the spacing between those moves like really close. I mean, it's so.
What is that? 5 milliseconds? It's 5 milliseconds between decisions.
Yeah, and it's not going fast. And, industrial robots go they can go on average 1 to 2, but sometimes they go faster than that. And they used to be running at like 50 hertz or 100 hertz. And it was kind of crazy what if you had looked at one point and the other point, it was like that was the distance between each sample, which is just kind of nutty. Slow they come together. So with this being at 200, especially 1,000 hertz underneath, that movement's going to be nice and smooth.
Right.
And it's still going fast enough. I don't think we go faster than a meter per second when moving our stuff.
Yeah,
we can if we want, but that's really working hard.
Right. Yeah. So, is there anything else? So I think the number one thing is if you're going to accuse anybody of being fake with the voice, it's actually OpenAI. Because that's all on them. That's their stuff, not figures. Number 2, not CGI, definitely. Number 3, if it was teleoperated, it was a damn impressive teleoperating. But I mean, I just like, again, they specifically said it's not teleoperated. It says it's all neural network end to end. And the motions, the fluidity of the motion, the speed up of the motion, that, maybe watching it, maybe 85 to 90% of normal human motion speed. I mean, it's like human speed, but not like if you're busy and rushing. It's
I think it's about average human speed. So it's about the speed that you would expect someone if they were just constantly doing it. And you notice it took a little bit of time for it to figure out what's going on because they have to go to the cloud, work all the details out and do the solution. That's to be expected. Eventually the inference will take care of it and it'll be able to respond a little bit faster. But once it does respond, it's definitely responsive moving around. The other things that we notice, okay, the legs aren't involved in it yet. It's just the upper body. So it's like, but that's going to come. We know it can walk. It wasn't very important for this. So you get an idea of the demonstration, the integration that's going on. And we expect there's probably going to be even more interesting tasks. So the next update in a week or 2 is going to be it probably walking around, picking up a few things and doing things a bit more spontaneously, giving it different tasks, more complex tasks to see if it can figure it out.
So I do want to note this because people saying the legs were not involved, it's not exactly true, because watch this. When it first goes out of its neutral state into its other neutral, you see how it actually squatted?
Yeah. So it still needs it for balance. Yep.
Yeah. And then when it finishes, it goes back up again. So here you can see it rises back up. But that was pretty cool because it actually did like a little lower and then raise. So it for whatever reason, probably for balance, it's squatting down and lowering its center of gravity slightly as before it starts. Because, you know, as the arms move around, it can cause it to like tilt.
Absolutely. So they have to do a little bit of counterforce when they're moving around. So it's clearly not scripted. They did a lot of demonstrations of these different tasks, so I was able to figure them out. I'm sure that maybe they did 1 or 2 run throughs just to make sure everything was working, to see if there's any sort of glitches. They'll go again. But still, it's showing remarkable progress, and it's showing that they're at takeoff. I mean, at this point, they're in a position that they can start doing way more complex tasks. They'll be able to do way more demonstrations. And the only question is, if they're able to do a lot of video demonstrations, they may not need a whole lot of bots. You know, if they're doing video demonstrations without the bot, it's just looking at humans doing that and being able to put it in there, they can start building a pretty rich training set pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But I still think they're going to want to get a bigger number of bots to really help them improve everything else. But yeah, if I was like BMW, I'd be really excited right now. I'd say, wow, can't wait to get it down here.
So FYI to the folks who work at BMW and who work at Figure, I live 90 minutes from the BMW factory in South Carolina. So I'm happy to go visit. I'm sure Scott would be a little
further, but I'll join. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. So I would love to come see it working there. I really do think the real crux of this, and my guess is that this is not taking them long, is how many shots of human video demonstration. Does it take 5 or does it take 500? If it's closer to 5, then the scalability is huge, right? Because you can do anything 5 times. It's like pick up a glass. Hey, drink it. You know, it's like, okay, I can do that 5 times. And then the bot, well, if it understands that after 5 times, damn, that means that you can learn new stuff really quickly.
Well, yeah, more than likely it will be that. Well, we're seeing that in many cases, you are seeing it as low as 5. 5 to 50, what Aloha and others were doing. So it's probably low. And my suspicion is that as you teach it more and more things, the more things you teach it, the more they become one shot. It's just like, and now it has such a repertoire and it understands everything so much. Now you're just going to show this one little thing, like, yep, got it. And you're done. Like you see that with a good athlete, the coach goes over and says, oh, your swim stroke, you just need to like this little modification, boom, done one time. They never have to be shown it again. So that's what I would expect, is that once it gets up to a certain level, it just becomes easier and easier.
Right. And to some extent, if it's able to synthesize between different motions, so maybe you've got a grasping an apple and another one is grasping a mouse and another one is grasping a pen, it will be, if it can bridge between those things and you give it something like, I don't know, this bottle or something that it's never seen before, it doesn't even need a demonstration. It's like, pick up that bottle. And it's like, I've never seen a bottle before, but I understand how to pick up objects.
Or I've never seen a bottle that size,
exactly.
I've been training things like, oh, that's an interesting bottle. I've never seen that, but I'm pretty sure it's a bottle, and then it knows how to adjust itself because it's dealt with things of different sizes before. So it shouldn't be surprised that, oh, guess what? Bottles come in different sizes too, just like balls do.
Right. Yeah. So that's something we don't know, of course. We can suspect. It said with the Keurig demo that it was done completely with videos, but it's not exactly clear what that meant. So this is something that's still to be determined from them, and we need to find out and figure it out. But if they're able to do it with just basic camera angles without having to do any kind of crazy rig or anything like that, and just show it a few examples and it's learning, that would be, and even better if it can learn it live. If it can sit there and watch you. And so you can say, watch me Figure do this thing. And then it's like, now can you do it? And it's like, okay. So that would be incredibly impressive.
Have it remember it because a part of the transformers, it's sort of like, oh, I know. And then how does that go back into the full training set? So potentially, does that mean you can show it some proprietary kind of moves? And then it doesn't become part of the full training set, yet it's still able to do that?
Yeah. I think, you know, the cool part about it is it says it's closed loop. Corey said it's closed loop actions. So it's basically like start with your hands like this, do an action, put your hands back like this. And you can train it anything between when your hands are like that. So it's all stuff that it can learn. And again, not like hard coded where it's like an industrial robot where it moves over. And if the thing's 2 millimeters away from where it was supposed to be, it just misses.
Just misses.
Like,
yeah. That's why it has a vision system.
Yeah, exactly. And a brain and auto correction and things like that. It's able to correct its trajectory. So, all right. So have we debunked all the people who say things are fake? I hope so.
Yeah, I think it's for real. We tried our best.
We tried our best. The only better thing we could do, of course, would be to go to their lab and actually see it in person, and then we would know for sure. So anyway, I'm just trying to plug us getting to go visit because
so we're 99% sure. Okay, if there's a way to take care of that 1%.
Cool. All righty, folks. Thank you all so much for sticking with us. Let us know what you think in the comments about that, or if there's anything we missed. If you think it's fake, I don't know. Let us know. And finally, a big thanks once again to ZBiotics for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to check out my link in the description to save 15% off your order. And in the meantime, we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.